Hello, listeners. Welcome to Tat Inspire, a podcast series brought to you by Tat Capital. And today, we are fortunate enough to have two important guests with us from Bharat Innovation Fund, Mr. Sanjay Jain and Som Choudhury. Welcome to you both, gentlemen.
A pleasure to be here, Ram.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Som. It's good to have both of you with us, and we have an important segue, mainly talking about India's capabilities as a deep tech economy, and why either of you believe that India can emerge as a deep tech product economy. So before we get into the India story itself, Sanjay, if I may ask you to introduce yourself a little more to the audience in terms of what has been your career so far and what led in your career so far in your journey to join hands with Bharat Innovation Fund alongside your co-founders and partners. And maybe Som, if you could also do the same thing once Sanjay does his answer, and that will probably give our listeners a bit of a background, what led you both gentlemen to join Bharat Innovation Fund.
Great. Thank you, Ram. So I've primarily been an engineer for most of my career. I did my engineering from India's premier education institutions. I went over to the US, did a master's. I worked in Silicon Valley, but I wanted to, do something entrepreneurial. And so I actually came back to India to set up a venture way back in '92. And, as it happens, that venture didn't go anywhere, but I learned a lot from it. And I continue to stay engaged in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I, in fact, went back to the US, came back to India once again, and I joined Google in India. And at Google, I built this product called Google Map Maker, which was a wiki for map data. And this product, I think, was used to generate Google Maps for the entire developing world. We put 170 countries onto Google Maps out of the work that we did in Bangalore. And which was quite a bit of scale, very interesting challenges. And in fact, Google India went on to do a few more products as well. And it kind of told me that, we were kind of ready as a country. And this is back in the first decade of the century. So, it looked like a very promising time to do more in India. I then actually left Google to join the government of India. I was a part of the National ID program. And again, the team in India built a national ID, which reached out to 1 billion people, and we got everybody covered in a very quick period of time. I continued my journey with I left the government to come back to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I did end the startup. And while I was there, I was in further conversations, and that led me to be a part of the team that helped design the new payment system in India called the Unified Payment Interface. The Unified Payment Interface, in a couple of years from launch, has beaten the volumes of debit and credit cards in the country. It's beaten gone past the amount of cash being withdrawn from ATMs. And, we are doing well over 1 billion transactions a month now, consistently for the past 6 to 8 months. So I've been a part of a lot of stuff that's been built in India for scale. And, through this sort of 30-year journey of building things and being on the entrepreneurial side, as well as part of the government sector, I was in a position to sort of try and decide what my next steps were. And I felt it would be very useful for me in my career to work with entrepreneurs and help them build many more products out of India. And that path led me to meet my colleagues at what is now the Bharat Innovation Fund.
Wonderful. So Sanjay, that's very, very interesting background. We will get into further details about some of the things you've done shortly. Som, if I could quickly ask you to introduce yourself, please.
Sure. So thank you, Ram, again. So my background is similar to Sanjay. Started my career in the mid-90s, graduated from IIT, Indian Institute of Technology. And then I went over to US for my master's, landed up in Silicon Valley in the late 90s, and been there for almost 2 decades, right, before I came back to India. Led multiple roles. So I was initially a product manager and then became a product director at Cadence Design Systems in the semiconductor electronic design automation space. moved over from engineering towards management side, did my MBA at Wharton, and during that time got heavily into the venture capital space, started, helped Artiman Ventures based out of Palo Alto to set up their offices in India. Went back to US, and then after post-graduation, started a company called American Grid in the Internet of Things, machine-to-machine interface space. Again, more into energy management, smart grid kind of activities. Raised a bunch of money, but we were probably a bit too early. The company, after almost 2 years, we decided to shut it down. I moved on to being the product head, global head of product management and marketing for a company called NETGEAR. In fact, it's a global company in the consumer electronics, consumer networking space. So I was heading almost a $600 million profit and loss for the company, global P&L for all the networking products, multimedia products, and so forth. And in fact, Australia was one of my top accounts, top countries, where a lot of NETGEAR routers and products were sold. 2012 is when we decided to come back to India. We were seeing kind of a lot of green shoots in the entrepreneurial ecosystem and wanted to get involved. But I came back as a managing director for a US headquartered company called Analog Devices. I was running their entire business development, sales, R&D team in Bangalore. And as you know, most of these multinational companies have almost their second largest R&D site out of India, especially Bangalore. So ran that for almost 5-6 years. But during that time, got heavily pulled startup ecosystem. I was missing the Silicon Valley so much, got heavily pulled into the Indus Entrepreneurs, Bangalore, became a charter member, started up a think tank for IoT in India, which has almost 2,000 startups now. And I think, Ram, you talked with one of them during your past visit. And then one led to another, got heavily pulled into the startup ecosystem, met with Sanjay and my current colleagues at Bharat Innovation Fund. And the timing was right to kind of create more deep tech, IP-led, innovative startups out of India that could scale globally, right? So that's how Bharat Innovation, that's how all of us kind of came together. Few of us from investment background, Sanjay and me more coming from an operating background, been running startups and large companies on both sides of the fence in US and India. So that's how we kind of all came together, and it has been a few years now, 2017 onwards. 2018, we did our first close, and almost 7 investments now.
Excellent. So thank you for that background. And gentlemen, with this background, let me actually take into a bit more questions around the deep tech capabilities a little bit. So I think the whole theme for our upcoming webinar and the focus at the moment is really talking about, does India really have what it takes to build the deep tech capabilities? And do you both actually believe that India is in a place, in a perfect position right now to build the future product companies, just like the Microsofts, just like the Salesforces, like the Oracles, like the SAPs? Do you think India will actually produce the next Googles and next Microsofts out of India? And why do you both believe that India can actually produce those next big multi-billion-dollar product companies out of India?
Sure.
Maybe Sanjay, if you could give us a head start, and then Som, it would be good to hear your thoughts as well.
Sure. I mean, my own experience tells me that the startup ecosystem, I've been a part of it in India for the past 25 years, including having done 2 startups and built so many products out of India, that, it has evolved quite a bit. And as, over time, we have seen the kind of capabilities that have been developed in India to build these products has really just gone up. So, for example, we built the Maps product, the MapMaker product out of India, and that was done completely with a team from Bangalore. And this was 10 years ago, and we have seen many international companies come to India to build products, and we have seen these capabilities grow in the ecosystem around us. And I think that has really fostered this kind of capabilities here. Plus, we've always had a bit of entrepreneurial ecosystem around here as well that has then enabled this innovation to come and to start to build at scale. And I think the last decade has shown us that all of this maturity has come together in a way that is able to produce, startups in India which are unicorns. So we have now product capabilities, we have the ability to take it to market, and we have investment capital coming in to support it. So I think all the ingredients are now in place for this next wave of really interesting deep tech startups to emerge. And I think that's what you need, right? I mean, talent, capital, market.
Yeah. So
Excellent.
I would probably give a bit of a history as well, right?
Sure.
If you look at the last 20, 25 years in India, we have made major successes as well. So I keep kind of talking about kind of the first wave of startups in India, which kind of started in the mid-80s. There was absolutely no capital back then. Even the Indian economy was not open. But, as Sanjay was mentioning, a lot of entrepreneurial energy for centuries. People came back from US. They saw an opportunity to kind of tap into the English-speaking, well-educated engineering middle class. And that created a $200 billion IT-enabled services, business process outsourcing industry, which essentially put India on the global technology map. That lasted, so I call it kind of wave one, that lasted till about mid-80s onwards to early 2000. You guys must have heard about these companies, Infosys, Wipro, Tata Consultancy. They all came out of this first wave. The second wave started probably in 2007-8 timeframe. And that's when all the global VCs, they came in. They were seeing what's happening out of China. China was probably 15 to 20 years ahead of us. And they were seeing kind of a similar growth curve in India. The Indian, GDP going up or capital income going up. They saw the green shoots of Indian acquiring smartphones, data becoming cheaper, and the entire consumerism journey, which kind of got initiated from wave number one, happened in this wave two in the last 12 years or so, right? And we created what? This entire money created 40,000 startups, 10,000 technology startups, now close to 35 plus unicorns, right? And again, put India on the startup map. We are number 3 in terms of the startup ecosystem today after US and China, right? And what this created last decade or so, as Sanjay was pointing out, now if you come to Bangalore, you see a good amount of venture capital money, billions and billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars flow in every year. You see 250 to 300 incubators and accelerators. You see good amount of angel community and angel groups. You got second time, third time entrepreneurs. The mentor-mentee relationships and so forth have started, right? And now, so the ecosystem is kind of got ready, right? And at the same time, as I was mentioning, India is today the second largest R&D site for many of these multinational companies, be it Microsoft, be it Google, be it Amazon, be it Intel. All of these guys have their R&D, second largest R&D site sitting out here, just like Sanjay had done in Google. These guys are sitting in India developing products for the global world, for the global customers. Now, with this entire ecosystem ready, talent was already there, right? All these guys, many of guys like me and Sanjay, we came back from the Valley as well in the last 5, 10, 15 years. And now, with this ecosystem, venture capital, all of this ready, the startups that we are seeing coming out, right, are more product focused as versus 2 generations back, it was more services focused. We see them more focused on the global markets as opposed to wave number 2 which was more focused on an Indian consumption play, right? So all of the ingredients are out there: talent, the mindset, the global connects, and now, of course, the money piece as well. So together, we have already started seeing multiple companies go out of India with global customer base. Companies like Druva, you might have heard about Postman, which is a unicorn now, right? And we are seeing the number of similar companies developing more deep tech, core tech technologies, with the market kind of being global, right? Emerging now. And those are the kind of companies Bharat Innovation Fund we are investing in, right? And if you see, some of the startups will be speaking at the 29th webinar, you'll see a lot of, in fact, most of them have global large customers today.
Yes. So, Som, thank you for pointing those some of these interesting features that makes India as a region which is capable to build the next set of companies. As a broad outline, maybe this is a question for you, Som, bit of a background in terms of what kind of technologies that do you actually believe, or I think there is a lot of buzz around various kind of solutions, whether it is AI, machine learning, blockchain, IoT, all kinds of buzzwords are being used to define what is deep tech today is. Where do you think India has got the natural strength? Do you think India has got more strength in one of these particular technology streams, or is India or Indian talent actually using a fusion of many of these things to create? What makes the feature set, which is so much more stronger, to build the deep tech companies?
Sure. Let me try to answer this. So what we are seeing is a combination of multiple of these things. It's not like a specific piece on AI or IoT and so forth. And our fundamental thesis, essentially, when we define deep tech, right? Deep tech, core tech, IP-led startups. What we mean by that is, see, historically, a lot of startups and so forth in India, we have invested, the investment community has invested in them, more focused on technology-enabled execution plays, right? So technology, yes, it's all tech-enabled startups, but mostly these are execution plays in the sense that you need money and you need a super execution for them to succeed. So what we are looking at is, when we say IP deep tech, what we mean by this is, do they have a certain specific technology foot and more, right, as part of their business, as part of their company, which is the IP? Then we check, is the IP kind of globally relevant? Not just in India, is it globally relevant? And how many competitors are there globally in each one of these cases? So that's how we kind of define the IP component. We are slightly horizontal. You will see many of our some of the startups will be presenting on 29. It's across AI, across IoT. You will see, we have invested in natural language generation company. We have invested in a cybersecurity platform company. We have invested in a drug development, a drug molecule company as well. So it's kind of broad, but underlying what we look for is, are these globally competitive companies that we are investing in? Is their IP, their intellectual property, can they stand at a global perspective with respect to competition? Okay,
Sanjay, what would be your thoughts? Where do you think is Bharat Innovation Fund's core capability sets as an investor in some of these great deep tech companies that is continuously pitching you on a daily basis, that you would actually run a strong ruler on? What would be those, say, key ingredients and you look in terms of picking those ideal portfolio companies to be added into your fund?
Yeah, so roughly the fact is that we see a lot of technologies being used, and we're really technology agnostic from a fund perspective. But what we do like to see are companies that are building products that are global, that logically the company could have been anywhere, but it's just so happens to be that it is being built out of India. And the market is where the entire world is, right? So whether you've seen companies that build it initially in India and then go out and start to sell to other parts of the world. And that's, I think, the kind of companies that we would like to see. So it's really not about the technology per se, but the quality of what they're doing, the kind of moats they're able to build around what they're doing. And those are the factors that we look at in the company right up front. And we compare them to global peers. We don't compare them to only companies within India.
Nice. So maybe a couple of quick questions around Bharat Innovation Fund's investment thesis itself, in terms of what do you guys currently have in your portfolio, and how has Bharat Innovation Fund actually come to its existence, and what is the ideal scenario in terms of total maturity terms that the fund itself has, and how would you actually see the fund evolving into a bigger investor in Indian landscape? Maybe if you could start off giving a bit of a background.
Sure. So the thing is, as the Indian ecosystem is maturing, we see ourselves as being a fund which is on the leading edge of where the ecosystem is going. And today we believe that is completely around IP-driven startups. And that's what we primarily invest in. So most of the companies we invest in are typically more enterprise focused, not really building B2C products today, because B2C products have a very different characteristic from the Indian marketplace versus the global marketplace. And so we are completely focused on a lot of enterprise value being created out of India. In our portfolio, you would see companies like Entropic, like Credit Vidya, like Zoomotors. They're all completely diverse, right? From fintech to drug manufacturing to AI based on emotions and natural language generation. I think Som already mentioned that, security. So we are taking a very wide lens to it, but we want to be on the leading edge of this kind of change, where we are building really deep tech startups out of India. As a fund, we would like to see us invest, in this fund and in the subsequent rounds, many more to be at the leading edge of that ecosystem.
Sure. So maybe if you could give us a bit of a background on who has been your co-investors so far, who has invested alongside you in many of your portfolio companies, and what led some of your co-investors to be convinced on Bharat Innovation Fund's capabilities to pick these startups and encourage these co-investors to come alongside you?
Sure. So let me, Ram, also, I think your previous question kind of hinted at a bit of an origin about the fund as well. So I'll cover both of them because that has.
Sure.
So Bharat Innovation Fund, I mean, see, even though we got started in 2017, right? That's when all five of us kind of came together. Then 2018, we did a first close. The history and roots of the fund actually go back, way long back, 2004, 2005. One of our founding partners, Kunal, he actually started an incubator under India's top business school, Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, right? And that incubator grew in leaps and bounds to be one of India's largest and the most successful incubation till date. And then our partners, we also ran successfully 2 seed funds with good exits and so forth. One was NASSCOM's India Innovation Fund. The other one was Infuse Ventures, sustainability, clean tech focused fund with good exits and so forth. So now, of course, we are essentially, the reason I'm mentioning is it's a long history of Bharat Innovation Fund being built on India's the largest and the most successful incubation and 2 successful seed funds. Now, when we are probably the only ones dedicated towards deep tech investment in the Series A, pre-Series A, Series B kind of space. And of course, we get a lot of deals and so forth from our incubator, which is kind of a proprietary deal flow to us. And we do a lot of other additional exercises with the ecosystem. So Sanjay is part of iSpirit, which is focused on creating the software product companies out of India. I am involved with IoTForum and TIE, which is more focused on creating IoT, AR, VR, physical digital companies from India and so forth. So we have a pretty solid funnel from multiple sources. The 7 investments we have done is kind of ranging from pre-series A to kind of series B, early series B. And most of our co-investors in these 7 deals that we have done are good, well-known marquee names as well. So Axel Partners have co-invested with us in one of our drug discovery platforms. We've got Falcon Edge, the US-based hedge funds, come in 2 of our startups, Entropic, Credit Vidya and the NLG company. We have got Inventors, Kanwal Rekhi's fund, Kanwal Rekhi based out of Silicon Valley, his fund. IDG Ventures, Matrix India have co-invested alongside us as well. And we have got some marquee angels as well coming in. For example, in the latest deal that we did with Fire Compass, cybersecurity startup, 2 angels. One of them is Kiro Mishra, who is the CEO of NTT Securities Americas, has come in, and a veteran in cybersecurity, Ed Adams, has also come in. So again, we have got a good group of both institutional investors, angel investors. And your next question was, yeah, so many of these deals, we actually led these deals, right? Because of our operating background, we were able to and historically kind of working with startups in deep technology areas and so forth, Sanjay, me, and rest of the partners. A lot of these institutional investors, they trust our judgment, right, in terms of finding the right startups and so forth. And we have a luxury in the sense that, many of the early stage deals and so forth might actually get incubated at our incubator before coming to us, which means we have observed them very closely for 9 months to 12 months. We have taken them out to customers. We have had the time to run a thorough due diligence and so forth. So that is case number 1, right? Why many of the other institutional investors who trust us to kind of lead the deep tech kind of deals. The second piece is many of the founders, they also are keen to get us on board as co-investors and so forth. And primary reason is, for example, in case of one of our fintech companies, Sanjay is on the board, and specifically the founder wanted him on the board, right? Because of his wide, knowledge of the fintech industry, about his development of the India stack and so forth, right? So in many cases, the founders themselves come to us and say, hey, we really like kind of that in-depth, knowledge of the industry, about sector-specific operating experience that you guys bring in. So we kind of, all of us, we roll up our sleeves and get to work for our founders, right? And we are not just passive investors. So we are actively talking with these investors on a weekly, even sometimes multiple daily basis. They consult us on multiple aspects. We introduce them to multiple ways. We discuss strategy very frequently. Obviously, we take board seats and so forth as well. So that's kind of a more of a, engagement with the founders, operating experience, helping these companies to succeed, right? Take them global. Is that what we specialize in? That's where I think both the investor community and the founder community, they prefer us to get on board.
Som, thank you very much for going through the thesis of your fund and your team's philosophies in general. So one of the things that we do at Tat Capital quite cleverly and have done fairly successfully over the last 7 years is by doing what we call as a 3C philosophy. First C being connecting right opportunities to right people. Second C being collaboration. We collaborate across Australia, India, growing communities and growing companies and growing investor base to provide much needed access to these markets. And finally, the third C being co-investors. So our family offices, not only they take positions in potentially funds like yourself, but they also like to be co-investors to potentially bring in additional capital on the opportunities they do like to take a bigger operating capacity into those companies wherever they find it relevant. And that is something that Tat Capital strongly believes in. And from what I understand from Bharat Innovation Fund's capabilities and the way you operate, you not only have the capabilities to pick right companies to be investable, but you also encourage your co-investors, which are of global reputation, to come and provide much needed additional capital and together open up the entire database of relationships, be it strategic or financial, to help your portfolio companies to really scale globally, which is very, very close to very close philosophically in terms of what Tat Capital does in Australian, New Zealand markets and its relationship to the Indian subcontinent. So on that note, gentlemen, I look forward to having further deep conversations with both of you and with our client base in the upcoming webinar. And until then, it is so good to chat with both of you, and look forward to talking again.